Good morning, Dan and Amy. So on Friday, Amy, we talked to our friend Brett Baer over at Fox News, and he gave us a little tidbit that word around town.
Oh, that's right. The big word in D.C. is
Anthony Kennedy may be retiring. Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy may be retiring to write op-eds formally rather than the op-eds he masquerades as Supreme Court opinions.
yeah.
But he may retire as soon as next month.
Right.
Oh boy. Then you've got total war with Trump's next Supreme Court nomination because that would alter the balance of the court.
Right.
And I suspect...
And the left is a little unhinged.
I suspect that the runner-up, Miss Congeniality there, Tom Hardiman, may be his next nomination if, indeed, Kennedy does retire, as is being rumored. Nothing more formal than that. But for more on that prospect, as well as the interesting treatment by the D.C. press corps of the termination of 46 Obama-appointed U.S. attorneys by Attorney General Jeff Sessions on Friday, how they reacted to Jeff Sessions doing that, particularly with respect to the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Preet Bharara, who was very high profile, much celebrated for some legitimate reasons. He's prosecuted some high-level corrupt Democrat politicians in New York State, like the House Speaker, formerly Sheldon Silver, as well as the Senate President.
Yeah, they call him the Sheriff of Wall Street.
Yeah, and he's, of course, gone after I think he also prosecuted, I think it was the biggest insider trading case in American history as well, in addition to a more curious case against Dinesh D'Souza on campaign finance violations. But anyway, he refused to resign. He decided that he needed to be thrown out the window rather than being escorted down the stairs, and that's exactly what happened. And so that gave the press more grist for the mill. For more on this, let's get an informed legal opinion, not my pretend one. I got my JD from Loyola University School of Law. Big deal. I'm not a Georgetown law professor and the author of Our Republican Constitution, Securing the Liberty and Sovereignty of We the People. That's not me. That's Randy Barnett. Randy, thanks so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Yeah, how's everything going in my hometown there?
Yeah, I know. That's right. For people who don't know the rich vicissitudes of Professor Barnett's career, he was at Chicago Kent.
And wasn't he at Northwestern University, too?
I graduated from Northwestern, and I started my teaching career at Chicago Kent, and for 4 years I was an assistant state's attorney for the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, prosecuting criminals in Chicago.
There you go.
Well,
all right. So
job.
if Northwestern upsets Gonzaga in round 2, I'll get us some Sweet 16 tickets. All right, Randy.
Yeah, I'm going to hold you to that now.
Okay, all
yeah,
right.
I'm marked it down, Dan.
Yeah, that's fine. I can deliver.
Sweet 16.
So what about? Let's start with the rumor mongering going on in D.C. as a matter of course, but the idea that Anthony Kennedy may be a real shorter timer than anybody considered, that he may retire within a month or so, according to what Brett Baer was hearing, not reporting, but hearing around the Hill. What do you think about that?
Well, I haven't heard it, but maybe that's because I'm in Florida at the moment at my in-laws' place.
There you go.
But I don't credit most of these rumors. But on the other hand, Justice Kennedy is getting up there, and no doubt that he would like to retire. And despite your criticisms of him in your setup for this piece,
yes.
He was a Republican nominee. He considers himself a Republican. That means, by tradition, he would want his position to be filled by a Republican president, and now he has one. So if he was waiting until that were to happen before he retired, that happens. That's happened already. So now it's time for him to retire. He may believe it's time for him to retire.
But don't you think President Trump would put in a much more conservative justice other than Kennedy? Someone like Kennedy, I should say.
Some people have speculated, and again, this is speculation, that his picking Neil Gorsuch, who was a Kennedy clerk, for the first position was in part meant to send a signal to Justice Kennedy that if he did choose to retire, he would be replaced by a judge that he would respect. I don't know that was the strategy behind the pick, but if it was, it may be. It was, even if it wasn't, it may be a fringe benefit of this pick.
Well, and going with Hardiman, the kind of runner-up in the first round, where Gorsuch was selected as the nominee, both Hardiman and Gorsuch flew through the Senate in terms of their confirmation hearing without opposition. I mean, Gorsuch, it was a voice vote; it was so non-controversial that with respect to their appellate court appointments, and so you have somebody that the Senate has already essentially vetted and found to be worthy of approval. So that makes him an attractive choice, and that I assume that was part of the reason he was attractive in the first place to be a finalist.
I would say it's a minor consideration because it's a completely different set of standards applied by both sides.
Yeah.
So the Supreme Court
Yeah.
then would be applied to a Court of Appeals position, of which there are many, and they get picked for many different reasons. So sure, it means there's been a certain amount of vetting, but nothing near what happens when you're nominated to the Supreme Court.
No, true enough. I want to get to this other matter, too, of the terminations of some 46 U.S. attorneys appointed by President Obama by Attorney General Sessions on Friday. This is something that has been going on since, since Jan Areno fired 93 of 94 U.S. attorneys back in March of 1993. So why the uproar among the D.C. press corps for something that has happened as a matter of course for half a dozen presidents almost?
Well, that's because if the press corps didn't have double standards, they'd have no standards at all.
Okay, well, there it is.
The U.S. attorneys serve at the pleasure of the president. So what do you suppose that means? That means that the president, if he decides to have U.S. attorneys who will carry out his policy, as opposed to the policies of his predecessor, they will then replace the existing state U.S. attorneys. And Preet Bharara is one of those men, but he has now made his bid for what I'm calling the martyr sphere by his tweeting out how he had to be fired, and he wouldn't have. He didn't resign. He had to be fired. He's looking to raise his profile so that now everybody's going to know his name who didn't know his name before. It just shows it kind of why he should have been fired.
But Preet also
goes out this way. Anybody who goes out this way in this kind of a political fashion needed to go.
But then after he was fired, he tweeted out this. By the way, now I know what the Moreland Commission must have felt like. How do you interpret that?
Well, he might also have asked. Now he knows what Dinesh D'Souza might have felt like, or now he knows what Reason Magazine felt like when he went after them because of some commentators that published things that put some comments on their website. Now he knows how a lot of people U.S. attorneys go after might have felt.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, he's a good example of why I'm highly distrustful of U.S. attorneys and going into politics and U.S. attorneys that behave like politicians. And we've seen in Illinois with U.S. attorneys that turned out to be disasters as governors, say, Jim Thompson. And even, and this on the Republican side, and Chris Christie, I think, is, a mediocre at best, too. I just don't trust prosecutors in political office, and particularly ones that get politicized while a prosecutor like Baraha. He's actually life imitating art. He's life imitating Paul Giamatti on Billions with his little routine out the door this weekend.
Well, I still have a soft spot in my heart for Bernie Carey, who was the boss, who was the state's attorney I worked for.
Okay.
And I also have to say that Rich Daley, who I worked for my last year in the prosecutor's office, was an excellent Cook County state's attorney before he eventually decided to set himself up to run for mayor. Then he became a little more political in the office. So I guess that sort of confirms your view. When he just started out, he was great, and as he was getting ready to run for mayor, the office got a little more politicized.
And what about Department of Justice being politicized? Because one of the arguments that's made, Powerline blog over the weekend by John Hindraker and others, is that draining the swamp includes the Department of Justice, and Jeff Sessions has a big job because of how politicized justice has become, in particular during the Obama administration, but not exclusive to him, including and specifically with the Civil Rights Division within the DOJ.
Absolutely, Dan, and this is one of the reasons why I thought Sessions was a great pick, because as a former U.S. attorney who went into politics, I guess this is going to undercut what we just said, he knew the Justice Department quite well, and he had the fortitude to stand up to really what's a stacked deck there at the Justice Department. And he does need to clean house. I'm not sure he'll be able to, but I can't think of another person who stands a better chance of doing so. And I know that he's on his first day in office. When he came over and met with the new Justice Department appointees, the one thing he told them was, "We're going to do the right thing, and we are, and we're going to stick to our guns."
He is Randy Barnett, Georgetown law professor, author of the book Our Republican Constitution: Securing the Liberty and Sovereignty of We the People. Randy, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Okay, I'm taking up on those tickets if the go Cats.
No chance they're going to beat Gonzaga. I hate to break it to you, Randy.
That would be big news.
No chance.
That would be a kind of big deal if that happened.
But you hold me to it. If they do, we got something cooking. Randy, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Okay, bye.